Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another online battle today. In this one, I take a Bretonnian army to the battlefield against Argwylon, led by Orgoth. I've got the Fay Enchantress in charge, hoping to bombard the enemy when possible, and hoping to use Mist of the Lady to cause trickle damage to units that are hard to hit in melee, like Treekin. 5-foot squires accompany her, just to give my infantry line a chance, with 4 units of peasant bowmen shooting fire arrows. I suspected at least one tree among my enemy, and so bringing fire seemed entirely worthwhile, and 2 of these units are ranked up to rank 1. Then I've got 2 units of mounted yeomen, just to increase the number of cavalry units I have on the field. I want to be ready for a large ranged enemy force, and I want to give my opponent cause for concern, force him to keep units behind to protect his archers, or to have to constantly worry about them being caught. Then I've got 3 units of Knights of the Realm to hold off any Wild Riders and to help against Forest Dragons, Treemen, and the like, and finally 2 units of Field Trebuchet to prevent camping and to apply constant pressure and damage to enemy ranged units. My opponent comes in with Durthu in charge, 3 units of Eternal Guards with Shield to hold back cavalry, 3 units of Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts, 2 ranked up to rank 1, 1 ranked up to rank 2, and I think they would have been better off as Hagbane tips to actually slow down any potential cavalry I had and reduce the effectiveness of my troops in melee. Then we've got a unit of Wild Riders ranked up to rank 4 that provides some negligible cavalry support, and potentially to shut down my ranged units, and then 4 units of Treekin ranked up to rank 4 make a line that can hold quite well. Alright, we're actually going to start paused for deployment here because there is an initial kerfuffle right from the get-go. So let's take a look at me first, Bretonnia here, with the foot squires up front, forming the front line naturally. We've got the Fay Enchantress back here for some support with the peasant bowmen with fire arrows. A very simple sort of formation here. The plan is just to move them up atop this hill and potentially rain down fire or hold this hill if my opponent comes up this way or decides to go down this way. Now, off to the side here, I've got the 2 Field Trebuchet units, and they're able to open fire for a very long time, and I don't mind if my enemy does come towards them, because I have these 3 units of Knights of the Realm right back here, over the cusp of the hill, so they're actually hidden, as you can see. So these guys cannot be spotted, so if anything comes in towards them, I will gladly charge them with the Knights of the Realm. Meanwhile, up front here, I decided to position my 2 Mounted Yeoman units just to get an early scout off, and also to put them in an advanced sort of, position. And it seems like my opponent was thinking the same thing with his Wild Riders. They are deployed in the woods here, and so right away these guys are able to spot each other and get, we got an early engagement. Meanwhile, the rest of his army is off to the side over here. Very simple layout. We've got the Treekin forming the front line, Durthu right behind them to provide some support, able to dive in wherever necessary. We've got the Glade Guard with their Starfire Shafts back here, and then the Eternal Guard with shields, able to protect any, flanking maneuvers from the rears, from the sides, whatever it might be. So, pretty standard overall layout. Now, right off the bat, you'll see over here, I decide initially to actually charge into the Wild Riders with a Mounted Yeoman, quickly realize that that is not going to work out in my favor, so I pulled these Mounted Yeomen back, and I decide to send these Knights of the Realm forward. Their hidden position, not so essential. I do want to shut down those Wild Riders as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the Field Trebuchet have already opened fire, of course. Initially, they're shooting at the Treekin. I thought I'd try to get some damage in there just before they get into melee, because, of course, these guys are hard to hit in melee. They have a very high melee defense, so I wanted to get some damage in early on. Quickly decide that's not really worth it, and I would rather hit some of these archers. So I do change my target quickly after. Now up here, Knights of the Realm do get stuck when I lose vision of the Wild Riders, but once I catch them again, I push forward and I decide to charge right in. Now I could have done this a little bit better. I could have actually sent 2 units in from the side and 1 around this way just to get a full surround. It would have been a lot more efficient, but all I'd done was sort of sent them all in, and I was also sort of commanding my Mounted Yeomen to push them outward. So you'll see I actually do a little bit of a clump here. I clump up a little bit. It's okay ultimately. I do get a decent amount of damage through a lot of morale damage, and almost instantly those Wild Riders will drop. They are able to tuck away though, which is why I wish I had got that full surround. And you'll see they do push in towards that Field Trebuchet. They will close that gap. They do get a little bit of damage in, but it's okay. The Knights of the Realm will chase them down and finish these guys off ASAP. Meanwhile, back here, you'll see the Mounted Yeomen continue to push out and around, just causing my opponent to be a little nervous about them, of course. You'll notice the Eternal Guard here had to shift their positions a little bit. They're now forming a blockade on this side because, of course, all he can see is this are these 2 units of Mounted Yeomen. Meanwhile, my infantry division, if you will, is pushing up the hill, able to take this hilltop and again fire down upon my enemy as he pushes forward, or if he decides to come this way, which I highly doubt, I'd be able to hold the line here as well. So overall, so far, it's going in my favor, and the Field Trebuchet now are firing into the ranged units, and you'll see they do a decent amount of damage. Quite a bit of hurt being put in before the lines are able to meet, and you'll see the Wild Riders have been routed off. Now, the Knights of the Realm are being pushed forward. I'm not going to engage with them just yet. I want them to sort of hold the line up front, and meanwhile back here, the Mounted Yeomen, I get a little greedy, a little impatient, as I tend to do, and I send them in on a charge. And you'll notice that while the Starfire shafts are going off, I am able to get in from the rear, and the thinking here was pretty simple. I know my Knights of the Realm are within range, and unfortunately right now they are hit by a Flock of Doom. Does a little bit of damage, fair call, it's the only thing he can really see that's worth hitting. So that does do a little bit of damage. Now, I want to bring my Mounted Yeoman in to try and distract my opponent and try and force him to stay put for just a little bit longer before he gets into the trees, because once he's in the trees, my Field Trebuchet will be less efficient and my cavalry will also be less efficient. So I want to try and hit him before he's able to do that. So I send these Mounted Yeomen in from the rear. You'll see he responds right at the last minute. This Eternal Guard turns around, but they were moving, so they're out of formation, they're not braced. I'm able to dive in, but they do hold back most of the cavalry, but it does stop the Glade Guard from firing for just a little while. And meanwhile over here as well, these Mounted Yeomen puncture right through these Eternal Guard, and they're able to actually hold back all three of these ranged units from firing. And you'll notice I do give the immediate order to pull back. Unfortunately, this last shot from the Field Trebuchet actually kills 3 of my Mounted Yeomen, and that does a lot of morale damage. As you'll see, they instantly decide that that friendly fire is a little bit too much for them, and they decide to, to give up. There you go. They decide to flee. They will come back, but I just mistimed that slightly. Overall, though, it did work out, because again, they stalled for a little while, and that gives my Field Trebuchet a little bit more time just to hit them out in the open here. And meanwhile, you'll see I have taken this hill over to the right here, and I have my Peasant Bowmen up here. They're not perfectly laid out, and unfortunately, most of his treekin are going through the woods. Now, you'll see throughout the battle, as I try to fire initially at these treekin over here, a lot of those shots will of course hit the trees and fall and do nothing, and even later when I decide to target some of the treekin that are exposed, those trees provide a lot of good cover. So it is quite unfortunate, but given the situation, it was the best I could do. Meanwhile, back here, the Field Trebuchet continue to open fire, and they're relatively unharassed. I imagine the Wild Riders were brought to take care of artillery and ranged units, but because they were quickly taken care of early on, I don't have to worry about that, and I'm able to just continue firing. And you'll see it does a lot of damage. Those shots keep coming in. I'm trying to shut down the ranged fire because I am worried about the ranged fire getting the better of my units' morale. So I continue to do that, and you'll see over here the Peasant Bowmen with their fire arrows, they are now targeting this unit of treekin here, doing a decent amount of damage, but you will notice every once in a while my fire arrows are hitting the trees and dropping to the ground. Meanwhile, his Glade Guard are responding in kind. They're opening fire into my Peasant Bowmen. Not a bad call. Of course, you do want to try and break them. You want to try and reduce my ranged fire. Completely fair call in terms of the target. However, the positioning is not ideal. Because they're all over here on this side of the trees are blocking their shots as well, as you can see. It would have been much better to just push them off to the side here, along with some of these Eternal Guard to keep them protected, and then open fire from this sort of open space. Yes, I could have opened fire at them as well. There's that sort of risk and reward mechanic always, but firing from here, they're just not as efficient as they could have been. Meanwhile, you'll see my Mounted Yeomen have returned into the fray. They're willing to fight again, and I'm trying to send both of my Mounted Yeomen in to distract or hurt the archers as best as possible, because I do want to shut down that range fire. So you'll notice this unit of Mounted Yeomen is being pushed through the woods up here, and this unit of Mounted Yeomen being pushed down just to, again, try and shut down these archers. So I pull them off to the side here, and I want to swing them in, and you'll notice he does a great job of actually intercepting. So I pull these Mounted Yeomen back, hoping to bait some of these guys out. Not successful at all. As I'm pushing in from here, these Eternal Guard dive in, and while they are able to stop a large chunk of these cavalry units, soldiers rather, the rest are able to dive right through and do a fair amount of work into the Glade Guard. Now, I was hoping that by diving in like this, he would pull his other Eternal Guard back to provide some support, but he doesn't. Good job for him. I was hoping for that bait to work in, because that would allow my Mounted Yeomen to dive in from the other side, but my Mounted Yeomen that did dive in are taken care of so quickly that he doesn't even have to worry about that. So they run off, and I decide to pull these Mounted Yeomen further away, because that clearly wasn't working. You'll notice here, though, this unit of treekin is taking a lot of damage. It is taking longer than I'd like it to because of all these trees blocking my fire, and you will also see that this unit of Peasant Bowmen has been broken from all that ranged fire. And finally, I decide I'm going to drop the bombardment. Maybe not the ideal situation, but it's the only option I have. So that trebuchet fire comes in, followed very shortly by a bombardment, and it does a decent amount of damage. It almost takes both of these units out. Unfortunately, they are still willing to fight, and it is starting to get a little bit on my nerves. This one decides to break, but these two are still fighting. Now, I do send my Knights of the Realm in as well. They were sitting pretty here for a while. I realize he's not pushing forward, so I decide to send my Knights of the Realm in, and I do clump them up against one unit. This attack isn't an actual attack. I just want to engage as many of his units as possible and then pull out to try and bait them out. I want him out in this open space. I want to get rid of this tree cover because I'm wasting a lot of ammunition to these trees. They should be hitting these trees, they're hitting these trees. Not good for me. So I'm trying to bait him out with this attack here, and I am taking a fair bit of damage, but of course I have the Lore of Life with me, so I will be using that to help myself. Now, as all this range fire comes in, you'll see I wait for this unit of Treekin to engage. Durthu gets in as well, which is a little worrying, but there you have it. I pull back as soon as possible when I'm pretty confident that everyone is following me, and in just a second I will put down, there you have it, Earthblood. So that will help make sure all these guys get their health back. They haven't lost too many models yet, so they have a chance of getting their health back. And back here you'll notice this unit of Mounted Yeomen actually punctured through 2 units of spearmen. He had his archers back here, and I decided, you know what, enough is enough. I might take some damage, but I'm going to puncture through, and I'm going to try and destroy these 2 range units. And it worked quite well. I do take a lot of damage. This Mounted Yeoman unit has been taken care of, but it's fulfilled its task. It's done its duty. The ranged units are taken care of. And you'll notice as these Knights of the Realm are pulling back, the Treekin are giving chase. So the attack has done its job. I'm not sure if he realized what was going on, but he is giving chase here, and you'll notice as that happens, I change my target, and I am now focusing on this unit of Treekin that are out in the open. And once again, I will pull these guys back just a little bit more. Earthblood more or less has refilled their health entirely, and then I decide, you know what, I can get a full surround on this unit of Treekin, and that's exactly what I do. I'm going to cut this off as quickly as possible, and this was a fatal flaw by my opponent. Pulling himself out into the open without any real support now is, well, not going to be a good day for him anymore. Meanwhile, off in the back here, you'll notice this unit of Mounted Yeomen was just ordered to chase down these Glade Guard. I didn't want to leave them free to roam. I didn't want them to be, well, able to come back. They still have a lot of ammunition left, and range units, of course, can cause some harassment afterwards and morale damage. So I send the Mounted Yeomen in to finish them off once and for all. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see it's been less than a minute, I think, and those Treekin are already giving up. So that has worked out brilliantly in my favor. Meanwhile, the Knights of the Realm move on to this unit of Treekin here, and you'll notice this unit of Treekin is finally fed up with the 2 field trebuchet. They have done a lot of work. You'll see they continue to get a lot of damage in, and meanwhile, a Flock of Doom does go down on the 3 Knights of the Realm. Not a bad call to try and get rid of them because they are causing a lot of hurt. And you'll see as the field trebuchet continue to open fire and cause damage to the Wood Elf lines, this unit of Treekin slowly but surely is making its way up. Now, I do try to give chase. Unfortunately, the Knights of the Realm are in lance formation. A bit of mismicro there by myself. I forget to take them out of lance, and that slows them down significantly when they're not charging. And you'll be able to see quite clearly just how much they're slowed down. The cavalry are not able to catch up to the Treekin before they dive into the field trebuchet. Now, at this point, it's not the worst situation. These guys have used most of their ammo already. I've got my value for money. 57 kills off one, 64 kills off the other, so it's not the end of the world. Meanwhile, you'll notice the peasant bowmen now are forced off the top of the hill just to give chase to these Treekin and open fire, so they are coming down. Meanwhile, up here, the Mounted Yeomen have taken care of the Glade Guard, so they're coming back here as well. Meanwhile, another bombardment coming down from the Fay Enchantress, or sorry, that was the Awakening of the Wood coming from the Fay Enchantress, and does a little bit of damage, more so for that healing, because you'll see Durthu came in and took care of my Knights of the Realm. So I was a little worried at this point because the Knights of the Realm were very powerful, and I wasn't able to bring them back to full health instantly. Now, this unit of Knights of the Realm, they do come back, so I send them in to shut down these Eternal Guard, and this unit will come back later. But again, with such low health, I was a little nervous about how I was going to use them next. Now, these Peasant Bowmen firing at this Treekin unit, trying to hurt them before they dive into melee, because again, if they do dive into melee with my Foot Squires, their high melee defense means they will last for quite a while, and I really don't want to deal with that. So I'm trying to shut down the Treekin as quickly as possible. It may have been a bit more wise to target Durthu this early on, shut him down, cause that leadership damage, but I figured I had the upper hand here as long as we didn't get into a prolonged melee with the Treekin. So that was my thinking, and you'll notice another Flock of Doom does go down, this time on my Foot Squires. Pretty good call there. The Knights of the Realm, as far as my opponent is concerned, have been taken care of. So now he's trying to take care of whatever, I guess, melee he can take care of. I would have suggested, however, a cast on these peasant bowmen. They're all clumped up, they're all very much together, and they're relatively damaged already as far as their health goes. So a Flock of Doom here, especially an extended one, may have destroyed my entire line of peasant bowmen. You couldn't call that a line, I suppose. Meanwhile, over here, I try to bait my opponent into another bombardment from the Fay Enchantress. I pull these Knights of the Realm back, and I hope he'll give chase. Unfortunately, he doesn't. Maybe he saw what was coming, or his units were distracted elsewhere. But I try to pull them into this bombardment. It doesn't work out. So that is a huge waste of the ability. But you live and you learn. Now you'll notice over here the Treekin are coming towards me, and so I actually change what I'm targeting. One of these peasant bowmen turn to open fire at the Treekin. I don't want them to get into these lines and prevent me from firing, of course. Meanwhile, this unit of Treekin, again, very quickly taking a lot of damage, and over here, the Foot Squires finally being brought into action. Just want to hold back these Eternal Guard and also bog Durthu down. So again, you'll notice this unit of Treekin fired upon by these peasant bowmen. 1 or 2 volleys is all it takes, and these guys have turned around, and they are going to give up almost instantaneously. Now over here, the Eternal Guard have been taken care of, again, almost instantaneously, and now it's all about Durthu over here. I send in the Knights of the Realm to provide some assistance, but it's all about the fire arrows, and you'll see just how much damage they do. Absolutely gorgeous seeing Durthu get hit like this. Mounted Yeomen and Knights of the Realm, meanwhile, back here trying to help against these Treekin, trying to finish these guys off as well, and you'll see these Knights of the Realm do a pretty good job shutting this one unit down instantaneously, but really it is all about Durthu right now. If I can kill him, if I can finish him off, the battle is mine, because these Treekin would instantly give up, and you'll see with the amount of damage coming in from that fire, his morale is dropping. The Knights of the Realm with their anti-large are doing a lot of work here. I send the Mounted Yeomen in just to get a flanking maneuver on these Treekin. Not the best idea. They could have been kept out and alive, but again, at this point, all I'm thinking about is shutting this nonsense down. If one of those Treekin, or if both of those Treekin units were sent down to damage these Foot Squires, it could have spelt the end of the day for that engagement, but ultimately, Durthu does give up, as do his Treekin and the Eternal Guard. Everybody shatters, and a close victory for Bretonnia. Now, my opponent's build was really not ideal to face off against the new and improved Bretonnia. I was half expecting a bluff with the Argwylon flag, but at the end of the day, he went with a bunch of trees, and I came with a lot of fire. The Wild Riders placement was also unfortunate for my opponent, as it was more important for them to be hidden than it was for my Mounted Yeomen to be hidden. Once I was able to shut down the only fast Argwylon unit, the battlefield belonged to me, and I just had to be patient. Something I'm notoriously terrible at, and you saw that with how I lost some of my Mounted Yeomen, but overall, it worked out. As always, for more Total War content, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I mentioned before, I'm hoping to get a lot more of my online battles this year, and there's always Total Breakdown as well. I do apologize for sort of that delay we've had. The last month has been a little crazy for me, but I'm back now and hopefully in full swing. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.